going on, my friends? I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table. And Jesus, I wish I could figure out how to get this lighting. You know, the lighting in here just always feels like there's too much light coming in. The sun's coming. It's Saturday morning, so the sun's coming into the south window over here behind me. Even though we have a curtain on it, it's still letting in a bit too much light. And then I have the overhead light on, plus I got a lamp on to my left. And then I can have this on and off, but it just, I don't know. It just seems like to me it's too much because it's lighter. It's creating too much light. That's just my personal opinion on that subject. We are looking at Classic BattleTech Mercenaries Supplemental by FanPro. So this was a follow-up of the Mercenary source book that they created that I did a video a while back on. And when I ordered this, I got lucky. Like I said, oddly enough, well, maybe not oddly enough, but a lot of FanPro products are actually still available 15, 20 years later. If you go look for them on the internet, they actually crop up more frequently than I expected them to, and they're usually fairly well priced. They're right around what would be a normal price for stuff if you purchase something new from Catalyst today. That's not to say that there aren't a few that are way grossly above that, but that is the way that goes. You know, I mean, we're lucky because there are a few. The fewer prints that there were of a given book, the more valuable they're going to be. And then there are some folks out there who, you know, used their brains down the back in the day and realized that. So they, you know, for example, Dominions Divided came out, and we paid what, about $45 for the hardback copy of it. And 20 years from now, how many of those will be floating around? So if you have deep enough pockets and you're smart enough to do that sort of stuff, or you've got the means to do it, perhaps you'll buy 5 copies of it and put 4 away, and 15 years later, stick them up on the internet for $600. Because I have seen some, I am not kidding you, there's a Operation Klondike source book that I spotted probably a year back, and I think it's still out there because it crops up every now and then. They want damn near $1,000 for it. I mean, geez, if you can get somebody to pay you $1,000 for something you paid $40 or $50 for, hey, you know, I'm just saying. But that ain't me. $1,000 would go a long way to fixing the freaking noise on the front end of my van. Just saying. No, not going to happen. So, is luckily for me, and very fortunately for me, a very gracious individual gave me a PDF copy of Operation Klondike. And at some point, I hope to get it printed out into the PDF printed out into a physical form. And because I've actually listened to quite a few other channels and their deep, in-depth reviews of the contents for Operation Klondike, and I've drawn a blank as to which ones right off the top of my head. There are, but I'm sure you all know the channels I'm thinking of. And they did, one fella did a very deep dive into it. He actually split it into 2 or 3 hour plus long videos on the subject, and it's very good. And I suspect it's probably put to the point. Although there's always some minor detail in an actual item that somebody doesn't review. Because let's be honest, you know, 300 page book, that's a lot of stuff, and you can't really review everything that's in them and not miss more than a few things. That's just it is what it is. So when I got this one, I had actually ordered, I saw the original Mercenary book, and I ordered it, and the shipper had mistakenly shipped this one and caught it just after they had sent the book out, and asked me if I could return it to them. Then they would send me the one I did order, and I just chose to go ahead and purchase this one as well. And I did a deal with the person, and it's from Dragon Trove is the name of the company. I mean, I suggest looking up their website. You might be surprised at some of the stuff that they have available. I surely am, and I keep checking on it because I never know when he's going to get new stuff or he's going to acquire things. It's just like secondhand material, and I sing about this often in videos. If you're, you know, a lot of people will buy game systems and at some point they just decide they're done playing that game system altogether, and they move to another game system, or sadly somebody passes away and their collection goes up for sale, and this is where we get that used book market. And then there's also people who just give stuff away and donate them, and they don't realize, once again, if somebody passes away and their family really don't have an idea of what the value are of some of these older books and stuff, they just give it away to like charity. Once again, there is another website that's I think it's a Goodwill. There's a Goodwill website that's out of the west, or out of the East Coast, and they actually come up with a lot of D&D or game related material quite frequently. And the fact though they do tend to ask a little bit more. Whoever's running that particular niche for them understands the value of these things, and so some of the stuff they ask for we're back to that. I can't afford to spend hundreds of dollars on something. If I spend $100 on one item, it better be one end all to beat all book. And then I'm going to be trying to figure out how I'm going to pay that $100, and then otherwise I could have bought 2 or 3 other books for that same $100. It's just like, hey, recently somebody suggested I put a deal. You've been seeing the tags, or you'll be seeing the tags of this. Go buy me a cup of coffee. Hey, you want to help me out? Buy me a book. Give me money. Come on, donate. Come on, man. Come on. No, if you feel charitable, you want to kick me back $5, $10 towards something, all that, any revenue I get off that buy me a cup of coffee thing is going to go to buy material that I don't own and don't have. It's just is what it is. It's like the PDFs. I'm not overly keen on them in the first place, and you all know that. But like I said, I understand the value of them, and the value of your dollar goes further on a PDF usually. Although I will point out that I love you, Catalyst, to do, but some of your older stuff that you're offering through PDF, you're asking too much damn money for them. You're almost asking, well, yeah, are you asking what the print of the PDF would have been when you first put the shit out, or when you acquired it, but that PDF is now 10 years old? You should bring the prices down on it. That's just my opinion on it, but hey, they don't have to they can do whatever they damn well want, because either you want the copy or you don't want the copy. As an example, I was able to pick up 2 hardback copies of a later version of the House supplement or source books. So I picked up House Davion and House Steiner. This is all up either just before or after the FedCom breakup, and I have yet to read them, but I got lucky and I was able to buy each one for about $25 a piece off of one of those websites I was just talking about. But trying to find the Liao and the Karita and the Merrick versions of them are damn near impossible. I have not seen a hardback version of them that was within my price range. So recently somebody gave me a copy of the Karita PDF and the Liao PDF. So now I have 4 or 5. I have yet to find the Free World League version of it, and push comes to shove, I can buy that from CGL for $25. And if I had that kind of money floating around, I would do that, and I might have to at some point, because once again, I want that. I want to read through it. It's just like a couple other items that I've been drawn some attention to regarding the jihad area. I'm trying to understand and catch up with 20 years of history, and the amount of stuff that went down and took place is quite extensive. That's one of the things that other people will do talk about in their videos. Recently, Renegade HPG just did a video interview with Ramsey Devon. He's the creator of Operation Lancaster, and hey, kudos! I'm great. Hey, I'm awesome. It was awesome to see them do that. And Renegade HPG has got a huge following, and that'll be a great kick for Devon and his project. I mean, if you've seen my video on Operation Lancaster, it is equally to anything that any one of these games from Facet to CGL have put out. and there's a lot of great material in there. And the artwork is outstanding. And if I think about it, I'll put a link to that Renegade HPG video if you haven't. I suspect anybody who's a subscriber of my channel has probably seen that video, or at least knows about Renegade HPG. If you don't, well, here's what it is. I can only aspire to a 10th of the fame and subscribers that those channels get. I mean, it's just like Red's channel. It's remarkable. It's not surprising that he's about to break 20K for subscribers, and he's only been at it for about a year, a little less than a year. I was in there on the early days. I mean, not the very earliest days, but I got in when he was in the 4,000 or 5,000 subscriber era, and the fact it's just boomed and bloomed. It's not, he puts in gobs and gobs of work. He takes it as serious. It is his livelihood at the moment, and I think it's doing well for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't just keep growing. It is not impossible for a game-driven YouTube site to get 50,000 subscribers. It's possible. So the fact he's got 20, he's moving up, and he puts out a lot of good material. He spends a lot of time working on the editing it and things like that. In addition to all the stuff he puts out, I think one of the things that really helps him is that he's able to put out daily podcasts where he just sit down and talk shop. You sit down and we talk everything BattleTech, and on average, I remember when I first started doing it, he had 25 people would be tuned in at the time, and he'd run for a couple hours, and now it's 100 plus people on any given podcast that he does. There'll be 100 plus people listening in, and I listen to his stuff and comment when I can. And sometimes there's so much stuff going on there. It's just I just get lost in the comments. So it is what it is. But for me, he runs this podcast at varying hours. Sometimes at night, sometimes in the early morning, sometimes in the afternoons. And with my very erratic job schedule, that works out for me. So when I'm out all night doing jobs and he's running a podcast, I'll tune in just so I can listen to him ramble on about BattleTech and try to keep up with the comments and stuff while I'm sitting in the trucks doing its job. And then is what it is. I really enjoy that sort of stuff because it makes me feel, I don't know, a little closer to other people who enjoy my passion. And a lot of people think we all know people who do not understand our passion for gaming in general, and they think we're crazy or nuts or touched in the head or kind of special. So anyway, this will be the supplemental version, and of course mostly what we're talking about is giving us a current or a more current version, a view of the a bunch of mercenary units to give you inlays and insights into what's going on in circa whatever. So we got credits in here on the credit page, old debts, some nice little stories and short stories, introduction to Mech Warrior 3rd edition, Success original field manual mercenaries, tainted only by the perceived bias of Wolf Dragoons mercenary command and its hegemony over the outreach, blah blah blah. So I was trying to figure out what year this is supposed to be set in. I'm not sure that it's giving us a carte blanche year just without going through it. It's not something I highlighted. See, 3048, outreach was close to second to Glacier. When we talk about the fall of the Mercenaries Guild, rebound out of chaos and order, boom or bust. This one's the Wake of the Rise in 63. On Solaris. Online style. The Mercenaries Atlas, Galatia, a close second, so we get an in view of the Mercenary Star and some of the stuff going on in there. The Hiring Hall, Galatia City, Mercenary Review and Bonding Commission. There's something, a side note a little bit on that. I've been making some comments in the last few videos about how it would appear that Clan Diamond Shark is basically trying to, I don't want to say trying, but they are slowly becoming the new Comstar. And then I get a couple comments of people go, Comstar's dead. Comstar's never coming back. Yes, you're right. They are not coming back. I did not say they were going to verbatim become the next become Comstar. I said that I keep saying that the writing's clear. It's the stuff's really there. It's easy to see. If you just choose to look at it. Everywhere they go, everywhere the clan goes, they are attempting to get their hands on HPG sites. So whatever world that has one of them broken, no longer functioning HPG units, the Diamond Shark are brokering deals, cutting, outright buying them from the local nobles or planetary councils, or you take your pick. Why would you do that? It's obviously clear that Clan Diamond Shark has a strong belief that they can fix the HPG network, or they have a way to supplement it. They have a way to tune into a different wavelength or something. Whatever it is that caused the Grey Monday failure cascade that collapsed 80% of the network, they've either figured out a way to fix it, get around it, or perhaps maybe they figured out who flipped the switch and put the whatever it is, the virus or whatever it is out there, and how to reverse that. And they're working towards a point when they have control over as many of these sites as possible. And in doing so, this taking into consideration what was Comstar's primary role. Other than meddling in the affairs of the inner sphere, it was communications and keeping open the pathways of communications for the entire inner sphere as equally accessible as possible. So, but amongst those things, that's just the major thing. We also know that they were keeping control, or they had a tight grip on the astrogation charts and systems for the inner sphere, keeping the pathways updated, keeping more, allowing anybody and everybody to tap into their latest astrogation navigation information. That gave them a lot of advantages and edges too. We have not seen the Diamond Shark getting into anything like that. But a third thing that Comstar was big time famous for was the com bill, the C bill. The C bill was the rock solid standard for economic success anywhere in the inner sphere, and allowed once again various house currencies to be translated between them at a fair rate that was fixed based on the Comstar. Or the C bill. So when Diamond Shark while they have not issued an actual bill credit of that nature, they are economically boistering and giving loans and accepting currencies and exchanging currencies on a case-by-case basis, because once again that shows up in the writing. So here we are seeing them supplementing Comstar's role. Another number 4 would be the Mercenary Review and Bonding Commission. For many years, it was this organization within Comstar that helped mitigate and to monitor the mercenary relationships between the mercenaries and their employers, and tried to create the rating system and to try to help keep them fair and honest. When Comstar started to fall apart, when the Word of Break issue came up, that's when the Welsh Dragoons on outrage decided, we'll just create our own version of the MRBC, the Mercenary Review and Bonding Commission. And it was successful for a while until more or less the Wobbies bombed outreach to oblivion. So, nukes will do that to you. Then now in recent years, we see it in the writings, in the stories, in very small spurts and bursts, where Clan Diamond Shark is now acting as a different variant of the Review and Bonding Commission. So much more effective than the original Comstar in typical clan fashion. What are they doing? They not only guarantee shit, they're going to back it up. So in one case, one short story blurb I recently read, a Merc unit had defaulted and somehow violated their contract and refused to own up to it and deal with it. So basically, the Diamond Shark dropped an assault trinary on top of the Mercs unit's command base and took care of it. You know, no more Merc unit. And the opposite side goes true. So when employers, nobles, and houses, whatever, are reneging on their end of a contract, Diamond Shark's putting screws to them, making them hold up their end of the bargain. So that's in part what makes the MRBC so important, is to keep everybody, give everybody at least a sense of stability. Once again, so here we see Clan Diamond Shark supplementing what was left, you know, the old Comstar in that role. So here's yet another thing. In addition to this, we've recently seen in Dominion Divided the Diamond Shark elements within Diamond Shark willing to take on courier roles, transportation roles, you know, negotiations, all for a price. You know, Julian Davion was able to use the Clan Diamond Shark, or to employ the Clan Diamond Shark to act as mediators in with the Turians in order to get Alexander. You know, geez, I know his name. It's just freaking. You know, anyway, get the Duke Alexander back from the Turians after his not well thought out adventure. And Jesus, Hassett, Alexander Hassett. Damn it, I knew the frickin' name. So anyway, they're acting as the mediator and the go-between and the messenger, so to speak. And in exchange for doing that, they broker a deal with the First Prince of the Federated Suns to acquire a specific world's HPG's compound and the buildings and the land, everything that Comstar had owned that was related to that broken, defunct HPG unit. That was their asking price. That was their coin to do the errand that they want, that Davion needed them to do. So why would they do that? If it's obvious as all to me, to most of you, that they're going to reinstate the HPG network in some way. We also know through sideboard stories that the Diamond Shark's fleet have been acting in the role of couriers and moving information and messages along their paths, like just about all the other you know, jump capable ships going around. They're all doing it, but Diamond Shark is doing it, and so that's just one more element. And no, they're not going to become Comstar. That's not what they're trying to do. But they sure are getting pretty deep into all the aspects of what Comstar was and all the services that Comstar represented. Keep that in mind. So if you're going to be, you know, the Ill Clan Alaric Ward is going to need an agency that can do a lot of what Comstar used to do. And it sure seems like Diamond Sharks are digging into that trench pretty hard. That's just my opinion on that. We'll see how that plays out down the road. I mean, it's just, I mean, really, it makes perfectly good sense to me. So we see Westerhand, the Poor Man's Solaris, Victory City, the Westerhand Games, Northwind, Off the Beaten Path, Northwind Military Academy, Mercenary Retreat on Northwind, Force Brief Supplemental. Right. So then we break into the couple dozen or so different Merc units. Some of these have been around a long time. Some of them have been around a medium amount of time, and some are brand new. And we get the basics in here. What I do like about this one is we actually see the pages are set up more traditionally, like the unit pages that we see in most of the source books and stuff. The previous version, or the main version of the Mercenary source book for this era, didn't quite read as cleanly, in my opinion. So when we look at all these, you know, Brian's Legion, you know, Carson's Renegades, Canned Heat, Crater Cobras. Some of these been around a long, long time. Some of them I've never heard of before. Devil's Advocate, that's new to me. Dropship Irregulars was new to me. It was great to read them. And Group W has been around. Grim Determination, Gravewalkers, Grangs Longstriders, been around. Hanson Rough Riders, of course. Elysian Lancers, 59th Strike Regiment, 21st Elysian Rangers. Yeah, the Elysian, if they, I've said this off and on for years. I really wish that they would have the resources and time to devote source books specifically to these larger mercenary commands. Especially, these have been, the Elysian Rangers go back to the fall of the Star League. They have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're quite extensive. They're quite large. Northwind Highlanders, McCarran's Armored Cavalry, the Centauri Lancers. They're all on par with Wolf's Dragoons. The only difference is they didn't have the direct resources and connectability to the clans that gave Wolf Dragoons an edge. They also had a lot more PR. Wolf's Dragoons, let's be truthful, they're the darling child of the mercenary circuit for many, many years from the player's perspective. So the fact was that there are quite a few of these very large merc commands out there that could rival the Wolves, the Dragoons in capability and size, that don't ever get, here's another one, Luxing Combat Group, that don't get the press. They just is what it is. I mean, part of the way it goes. So here we are, the Northwind Highlanders. And we got the Regulators, Assassin Snipers, Stealthy Tigers, Spades Brigade, Swans Cavaliers, the Thumpers, Wannamakers, Widowmakers, been around for a while. We got some color versions of paint schemes to give you an idea what a merc unit's primary choice of colors might be if you choose to do your painting. Wilson's Hussars. I've always liked the Wilson's Hussars. They are characters. Then we got our employment roster, who's employed by where and where they're based off of generally, or where they're hanging out at, as much as we know. Then we get into some supplemental rules and organizational material. Specifics. Let's see. The Blackthorns are rated an A. Blackthorns may deploy using hidden unit rules with the restrictions set by scenario type. Blackthorns may also use the banking initiative and overrun combat specialties. So, always to give us a little extra. There's a topic that comes up mostly with Dungeons and Dragons, but they have a tendency to cross over into pretty much any game system out there. I don't care what the game system is, and it's called crunch. There's a lot of people in the last 20 years that started crying about rules heavy versus rules light, and so and I've done a video or two on this. I think it's buried somewhere in my YouTube channel's archive of videos. The gist of it is one of the things that people newer players tend to forget is that we all had to start somewhere. So these original game systems, when they first started, are actually piggybacking off of game systems that came prior to them. Nothing is uniquely new until you go way back into the early 70s. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of commonality, a lot of common ground between game systems. Certain mechanics apply regardless. You can't put a copyright on certain things. McDonald's can put a copyright on the term Big Mac, but they can't put a copyright on a burger, because a burger is a burger and everybody has a right to a burger. So in the same aspects of movement, you can't put copyright on movement rules, because movement rules are just rules on how things move. And it has no context as to a specific genre or specific corporate claim. This is standard stuff for copyright stuff. I mean, it is what it is. So when I hear stuff and people go on about crunch, we get crunch because somebody wants something new. Somebody has some question about how something is done, and it's either not addressed in the very original rule set, which then means somebody wants to address that, which then brings us another set of basic rules. or they want more in-depth information on that specific role. So if we look at movement once again, any game system, the movement rules can be less than a paragraph, or they could be several pages of charts. But at the end of the day, they're pretty basic. Your unit or your machine or your person can move so far, so fast in what's an accepted route. So if you can run 30 feet in 6 seconds, which is pretty damn good, I think that's impossible. But the truth, that's the basis of it. The same thing translates over. So when we want to have much more complicated rule, how do we deal with things like too much weight, conditions like, is the ground too soft, is the wind blowing too hard, are we running uphill, are we running downhill, is the ground covered in ice and snow? I mean, all that is extended rules, extra stuff, and that creates massive tomes or multiple tomes of rules. At that point, that falls into that category of people going and saying, "Oh my God, I have way too much rules to work with. It's rules heavy. It's crunchy." Now that's not to be confused with awkward rules. Once again, people are trying to recreate the wheel all the time. So every time somebody comes up with a new game system, keep that in account. Somebody decides to create their version of Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't know, Pathfinder, but so what they do is they look at those rules that they grew up loving to play and thinking, I can do something that's better than this, and they do that. They tweak stuff, but they're looking at the foundation that was created by a different company, by a group of different people who over time have evolved through the hands and insight and editorial control of other people. So, if we look at Dungeons and Dragons, it's in they can say 5th edition, and they're working on this dubious 1 D&D, which would technically be a 6th edition. But I make the argument, and I've done it before in other videos, that it's actually probably more like 9th edition, because if you add the original rules, the white box, the white rule set, then white, red, blue, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. There's 8 editions right there. And if they put one D&D or one D&D becomes the 6th edition rule, now we've got freaking nine evolutions of the rules, and some of them were quite radical. So we do the same thing with the games like BattleTech. BattleTech, for the most part, the majority of the rules that were written for basic combat and operations on a tabletop war game are the same as they were 40 years ago. Now, that's not to say that they haven't been tweaked, they haven't been smoothed out, and they haven't been adjusted. But the basics are still pretty much consistent all down the line. This is why we don't have 9 versions of the combat rules for the tabletop version of BattleTech. And MechWarrior, so when we start talking about role-playing version, a role-playing game is distinctly different than a tabletop war game, because it adds a whole lot more elements on a personal level, because you're playing personally, immersing yourself into the setting of the world. And at that point, you want to have a wider range of explanations on how certain things are done. We also talk about the rules light, rules heavy. So in order to get rules light, they had to have gotten to the heavy rules to start with. You need to have a robust library of options available to you before they can smooth those out, thin them out, consolidate them, and reduce them to, once again, to their basic components. So when I hear people going on about, the new fantasy blah 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 is rules light, is the bomb, and I thought, you obviously never played the very original version of the game that you're going on about, or games similar to it, because they were all pretty smooth and pretty lightweight too. There was limited amount of stuff. That's why so many players and so many people, the veteran players of BattleTech, for example, will say, all you got to do is have a willingness to stand or sit at the table and play, because you'll catch on pretty quick. Everything's pretty easily managed on a one-on-one basis. If it's just one mech versus one mech, you've got one control sheet, Nowadays you use a card, a handful of dice. And the basic rules are how far can you move, how fast can you move, when can you shoot, what can you shoot, and then it's at that point it becomes resource management, i.e., how much heat did you use up, how much heat did you allow to dissipate, how much ammo did you use up. Move on to the next round. Pretty quick, pretty simple, pretty basic, not hard to learn. Now, much harder to get good at tactics and strategy and things like that. But the same argument made for chess. If you are a beginner playing chess, the concept of chess is pretty easy. The nuances of thinking 6 rounds or 10 rounds ahead of your opponent, there's where the real skills come into play. Right? So in the cases of that, when we look at the backs of that, why am I blabbering about that? Well, that's why I'm looking at these just about every source book, every TRO, everything that gets put out by BattleTech, but by any game company, generally include some kind of addendum in the back that's going to add things that either tweak or enhance original existing rules, or are going to add new ones altogether. So, for example, the alternate mercenary creation rules. They didn't exist until somebody come up with an idea. How do we determine the final starting category for point pool values? Personnel, warriors and support, select personal and experience levels. All this stuff was designed to help you set up creating yourself a mercenary unit from the nuts and bolts perspective. And it's the same when we go into combat rules and adjustments and things like this. Well, why are they doing this? Well, this is alternate mercenary creation rules. So if you weren't happy with the original creation rules that came about in the original Mercenaries source book, which is out on my shelf. I was looking over here thinking maybe it was sitting over here, and no, it's not. It's out there in the other room. So that's crunch. At the end of the day, they just added more options to your tables, more options to your play. That's crunch. Don't use them. But the idea is, because we have all that stuff, because we can go and get into a much more in-depth version on how something's done. I want to know about weather. Well, let's talk about weather, how the velocity effects of winds. Here's a whole page on it. Special weathers like hurricanes, mist, gales, droughts, how they can apply to your game mechanics, existing mechanics that you use, and how do you make things, in the case of this one, how does the weather affect casting's magic? What's the damage from being exposure to heat, excessive heat and cold? This is something that heat is something we're quite familiar with in BattleTech, but when you're talking about other game systems, not so much. And it's because of the mechanics of the basic mechanics of the game originally. Somebody thought, well, geez, these machines use a lot of energy, they fire off a lot of weapons, they're generating a lot of heat. And then they use these heat sinks to dissipate that heat, to bring that heat level down so they can continue operating. What's that doing to the pilot? How does that affect the guy in the cockpit? And then obviously MechWarrior takes it to another level. So it's the same thing. We talk about encumbrance and movement, encumbrance and characters, terrain definitions for movement, large scale overland movement, etc. So the fact is, basic movement rule in the original game book was about a paragraph. Who gave a damn? This is what you need to know: how far your character can move in a given round. And then if you wanted to know how much shit it could carry and how much that would affect movement, you would look at encumbrance. And then the two together would make that decision: how much stuff can you carry and how fast, and how long can you do it. Then we expand on it. This is where we get the extra stuff. So, hey, this is a great book. I mean, it really gives me another updated view of mercenary units that are in current fashion and current rendition. The only real beef or disappointment I have between this and the non-supplemental version is, in reality, they kind of piggyback too much. It would have been nicer if the supplement would have been nothing. If all the mercenary commands listed in the supplement were not also, half of them or more than half of them were also listed in the original version. And the fact that it would have been nice to see the original version's mercenary units and then another 15, 20 additional mercenary units that were not covered in the first one. And we know there are hundreds of merc units. hundreds of them. So, that could have been something they could have done. That was the other problem, and I've said this before in other videos when it comes to Fan Pro products. Some of this stuff supplements each other. So they get you to buy the first book, and then a year later they come out with a supplement book that's basically supposed to be a companion to the first book. But a lot of what's in the companion book is in the first book. You're buying it for half of the material, which is great for the company, because the company's generating revenue. They absolutely have to generate revenue. They must continue to sell product or they won't be in business. That's the honest truth of the realities of the world we live in, is what it is. So, things like Operation Lannister have huge value to a much deeper fan base who crave additional material on other things that operate within the game systems that we enjoy. And the fact of the fan base can always produce far more material than the company can do is accepted fact. This is one of the reasons why Wizards of the Coast's big faux pas in talking about changing their open gaming license that have been in play for decades, the sudden grab of greed. They saw these other third-party outfits making some significant coin, and they cried about it. And internally, well, that's not fair. We should get our share of that. Well, that is true. I can't fault them for wanting to get a share. But their way of going about it pretty much took an awful chance of wrecking their whole company. Because if you piss off your fan base sufficiently enough, they will turn their backs on you. I do not have to spend my hard-earned money on your material. Not when I can find third-party material or completely new systems. That's a fact, Jack, too. Anyway, I'm Rick, and this is me babbling. So until next time, you guys have yourself a great weekend. Going on, my friends, this is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right? Till next time, I hope you guys have yourself